Welcome back. It's been a week since Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte signed into law a measure that would allow full foreign ownership of businesses in select industries such as telecommunications, airlines, and railways. To tell us more about foreign investor community's reaction to this and how they're currently positioning is Chris Nelson. He's the Executive Director of the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines. Chris, good morning and welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very nice to be back and back here in the Philippines. It's great.
Welcome back to Manila. Now, I've seen that you've met with Antonio Lagdameo, Philippine ambassador to the UK in London, where you discussed what the passage of the Public Services Act will bring to the Philippine economy. May we know what impact you're expecting from the passage of the PSA, along with the Retail Trade Liberalization Act and Foreign Investment Act, especially where UK firms are concerned?
Sure. So first of all, yeah, it was a very good meeting and great to see Ambassador Lagdameo again. We have very close relations. I think you're right to what you just said, first of all, is that it's been the passage of these three bills, the Retail Trade Act, the Foreign Investment Act, and of course now the Public Service Act. And the British Chamber has been one of the leading advocates for that. What our role now is to communicate to companies. We've already done that with the Retail Trade Act. We anticipate, obviously, a lot of interest, particularly with the Public Service and Foreign Investment Act. It's hard to give a very specific number yet, but I think what British companies will be looking at is the opportunities that the Philippines now presents. And as we've consistently said, Rain, on previous interviews, our role is to get companies to come to the Philippines, not only as an entry to a very important market, but as a gateway to Southeast Asia. And finally, I say, obviously, there's been estimates of what the Public Service Act, these reforms could bring. I mean, Joey Salceda, I think, has said it could attract about 300 billion, obviously not just from the UK. And obviously, the DTI is also thinking it can bring in the next 2 years between 60 to 100 billion in investment. It's a very important move. We congratulate everybody involved, and we think our role now is to continue to promote this, and we'll see those investments coming in.
Certainly. If I understand correctly, there are about 200 UK firms in the Philippines right now, and we do hope to expand that in the coming months. Now, while you don't expect a rush of investors in the short term because of the more investor-friendly environment, you do see UK retail businesses moving on from the current low-risk franchise model and more for the longer-term opportunities. What else might be stopping or slowing down the entry of British businesses into the Philippines, you think?
Sure. So first of all, yes, we do see that. I mean, I think our webinar on the Retail Trade Act was very positively received. And obviously what we're now looking at and arguing for is a longer-term investment. I think what British companies, and I think that covers not just British companies, it would also cover obviously European as well, is the need to continue to invest in the digital infrastructure. I think what companies are looking for is further investments in public infrastructure. And obviously we've had build, build, build. We've seen that obviously with the pandemic, the need to continue to boost that digital economy and continue to invest in those areas. I mean, the Philippines has obviously a lot of talented people, and that's clearly what attracts, and we've seen that in terms of business outsourcing. But also, I think we can do a lot of support on the infrastructure side. And if I link it back to the Public Service Act, obviously what we see now is that will bring increased competition, there'll be an improvement in services there, and that will also be a benefit to UK companies.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, it seems like India, there seems to be a growing resistance from local farmers and local businesses who are worried about the risk of a flood of imports to the local industries. Do you see that, how that could be a valid concern?
Look, I think there's always going to be concerns about a trade agreement, but I think what we got to look here, Rain, is the fundamental and overwhelming benefits of joining RCEP. And we've seen that actually with other countries in Southeast Asia that have already joined. And we would obviously, similar to actually obviously the Department of Trade and Investment, advocate and encourage that the Senate ratifies RCEP when it returns, which we understand obviously beyond the 23rd of May. Now, regarding those concerns, I think Secretary Dar of Agriculture has answered that, as also is the key negotiator, which is his Undersecretary Alan Gepti from Department of Trade and Investment. And I think what we've got to look here is that the overall benefits of RCEP will far outweigh potential concerns, but also the potential benefits in terms of agriculture. So I think what's key here is that the Philippines does ratify RCEP, that I think those concerns on agriculture have been looked at, and I think what it will require, as Secretary Dar has said, further investments in the agricultural sector. But also, let's not forget that the benefits to the Philippines by ratifying, not just in agriculture, but across the whole wide of sectors, will be very important. And I would just say, at this moment, the UK is obviously looking, as it sees itself post-Brexit, do further trade arrangements across Asia. And therefore, it's be very good for the Philippines in terms of joining that RCEP, in terms of obviously how we see the growth in trade. So concerns have been looked at. The key is now, let's ratify, and the benefits will definitely come to the Philippines.
Mm-hmm. Well, one estimate says that if the Philippine legislature, the Senate, does not ratify RCEP, Manila stands to lose up to 2% in GDP growth. How much less competitive would the Philippines be in the region? How much less attractive? Right now, from among your organizations, from among the British firms that you've interacted with, how does the Philippines rank in terms of attractiveness to these investors?
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, I think we have been very encouraged, and as you started off with the interview where we discussed, obviously, the passage of these economic reform bills, where the Chamber, along with the British Embassy and Department of International Trade, has been one of the leading advocates, is the fact that we see this as a total package. And RCEP, joining that regional trade agreement, is critically important. Let me bring it back to a point that we've said many times. We have consistently advocated in the UK that the Philippines is a place to invest in, to do business, but also not only for the attractions of the Philippine market, the talent of the people, the fact it's one of, obviously, in terms of its consumer market, but also that it's a gateway to Southeast Asia. Now, linked to that, you have to say ratification of RCEP is critically important. And I think, Rain, we should look at this in the context that already we're seeing, I believe, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, I believe, are going to have or are ratifying RCEP. And RCEP will represent about 30% of the total world's GDP. So it's very important. And I think that, as we said, and we linked it to some concerns, yes, and I appreciate the DTI and the agriculture have looked at those concerns, but it is very important. And I think the overall, finally, I want to leave this to your viewers, is that it's a total package. We've seen these reforms. We want to see them continuing, opening further the economy, and clearly joining RCEP is a critical factor and a support which we would welcome, as will, I believe, overall businesses, and the benefits of the Philippine economy will be there.
All right, Chris, this is the final question. We don't have much time anymore, but I just had to ask you, well, cryptocurrency prices jumped the past week after the Bank of England wanted tighter regulation of crypto to ensure risks stemming from cryptocurrency markets are mitigated by encouraging greater coordination between domestic and international regulatory bodies. And then we have the likes of Axie Infinity operator theft. Do you see a lot of British firms using crypto for legitimate transactions here? What is the stand of BCCP on the use of cryptocurrency for transactions and investments?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen a lot of transactions yet in cryptocurrency. However, I would say that the UK is a leader in fintech, and is clearly there are opportunities. I think cryptocurrencies and financing and digital economy is something that we would look at. I think obviously regulation of that area is important. But I want to say this, I think the UK is a leader in fintech. I think the opportunity to boost digital trade and obviously support trade through digital currency is important, so we would support that. So yes, I appreciate we're short for time, but I think it's an important development, and I think you'll see continued growth in that sector.
Certainly, we'll make time for more of this discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today. Chris Nelson of the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines. Always grateful to hear your organization's thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us today.